Okay, well, this is it, week 6, the last week of class. In fact, 3 more days, class will be over for this quarter. Reminding you again that all assignments are due by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, Friday, June 15th. Cannot uh, provide any um, assignments or accept any assignments after that date. And just wanted to let you know as we go ahead and get started. Make sure that you activate your audio. If you don't activate audio, then you will not be able to hear the lecture. Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, well, let's go down to the bottom here. As you can see, this week 5 is um, the last lecture that has been recorded. I will be recording this lecture today at the end of the lecture. So make sure that you pay attention carefully for the key word or phrase that I will be giving to you. Okay, let's get over to the announcement. Drug-related criminal activity treatment and rehabilitation strategies. Um, and so chapter 10 of drugs, crime, and justice. I sent you those PowerPoints. As you know, I don't include them in the lecture. They're very good resources for outline and for learning what the assignments are for that week, learning the details. And then we're going to go over these treatment challenges relating to opioid addiction. We've spent a lot of time this quarter talking about that. And drug treatment and rehabilitation programs. And remind you of our lecture today. Your discussion post, initial post due tonight. Methadone clinics. Some of you have already posted some very cogent details in your discussion assignments. Again, reminding you that your initial post is due tonight, but that your reply post is due Friday, June 15th, 2018. If it comes to 16th, I will not accept it. Finally, complete the final exam, which is timed. We're going to talk a little bit about that. It's really one that if you've done the assignments, particularly if you've done the projects for 2, 3, 4, and the last one for week 5, then you will be prepared for that exam. Also, those PowerPoints I gave you are very helpful in preparing because they're set out in outline form, basically. And so again, there's highlighted June 15th, 2018. Again, reminding that the quarter ends. So if someone didn't know it, they either didn't pay attention to the announcement or the calendar, which we're going to look at in a second. Take time to complete the end of quarter student evaluations because I look at those or they'll send them to me so that I'll be able to see not the actual evaluations, but they'll let me see some of the points that you made, and then reminding you to finish strong. Finish strong, okay? Then let's go to the calendar. Okay, here it is. Okay, so it gives you this week's reading assignment. your initial post, your live lecture, and then reminder what I said earlier. Reply post, final exam is due, and then there's, if you click on this, it says quarter ends 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So you have plenty of notice of the fact that the quarter will be ending. Okay, let's get to the module. Let's see my little, okay, let's close out. Okay, there we go. Module 6. Again, as I've said to you throughout the whole quarter, Drugs and Crime Course Guide is also helpful. But at this point, because the assignments that you have this week, you take a look at them, consist of your discussion post, your final. And the final will consist of multiple choice questions. It is timed. You have 1 hour. 1 hour. And you will, I can't tell you how many questions there are, but I can tell you that you should be able to complete this exam in an hour easily. And just remember that it's timed. Make sure that you're not distracted at the time that you take the exam. I would recommend taking the exam Thursday night or either Friday, one or the other, so that you can get it. But don't wait like right at the end, 11 o'clock, and start trying to do it. If you're going to do it the latest, I would recommend it's 10 o'clock that evening. However, make sure that it's quiet where you are, uninterrupted by phone calls. Don't be trying to look through materials, because that violates the academic misconduct policy. The idea is for you to have studied and prepared for this exam. Again, the best method for preparing it is to look at the assignments that you've done, and also recognizing the fact that if you've done the reading, and if you would go back and look at the PowerPoints, you will find a whole lot. And then if you have time, you could, of course, go back and look at the lectures, because the lectures, I go over each module to discuss what's in the module and give you some ideas and things. But, you know, this course has been so heavily engaged in dealing with problems that result from drug use, and then law enforcement's response. That's the other part of it. That it's stuff you might have probably already known before you took this course, but this course got you thinking, got you focused, thinking about a lot of issues and things like that, which we're going to spend time. If you do have any concerns or questions, feel free to reach out to me with any serious concerns that you have, but you should do fine. Do not worry or panic. Just remember, you've got the answers, and then you just have to put them in. Take your time, read the questions very, very carefully. Remember how multiple choice questions generally are. There's usually 2 that are not even close, and then there are 2 that are close. And there's one that, if you really know the material, that will jump right out at you and get them done. And just perform well. You all are capable of doing it. You've done pretty well this quarter. My students have done pretty well with the assignments, following the instructions of the rubric, which is the key thing to completing all the assignments, as I've said over and over and over again. So we don't have a rubric with the final. We do have the actual final itself, and like I said again, you want to make sure that you take the time to study using the PowerPoints. Just a little tip for you that will help you a whole lot. And I give you those because of the fact that it's an outline and summary of the chapters that we cover each week. Okay, let's get into the actual lessons. So today we're going to talk about drug treatment programs, and we're going to talk about some of the timelines, the treatments that are needed for heroin and opioid addiction, and impact on recidivism. I've kind of talked about that the whole quarter, and then we're going to discuss the development and use of drug courts. I've kind of talked about that as well. So my experience as a police officer and also as a criminal defense attorney and having represented people in drug court can provide you with some insight on that. So let's take a look at treatment for opioid addiction. I think that one of the things that you should recall, if you have a chance and you haven't, to look at that last lecture that we did, week 5, at the end. And if you can't, take the time to go back and look at the video, Chasing, what is it called? Chasing the Devil. I think it's Chasing the Angel. What is it? I know the term. I just drawn a blank on it. Chasing the Dragon. Yeah, there we go. I was going to click on it. But make sure that you go back. I'm clicking on it just to show you. Yeah, Chasing the Dragon. That's the term. Take time to look at it. It's about a 50-minute one, but it gives you a whole lot of information that will help you prepare for the exam also, if you haven't had a chance to look at it. And if it's garbly or not clear from the recording, I'm trying to figure out a way to get it clear when we add videos into it. But they're telling me there's several ways, so technical support is working on trying to get that so that in the future we won't have that issue. But take time to look at that. That is a very, 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 very good video. Okay? And you're not wasting your time when you do that. So anyway, it is obvious that people find themselves in situations where they reach the stage where this addiction is like a massive grip on their lives, and it consumes them and overwhelms who that person really is. They're not bad people. They're people who sometimes, as we discovered through medical treatment, very careful about how they use over-the-counter drugs and painkillers, which can be very addictive and can graduate into some serious use and go from those over-the-counter drugs to heroin. And people find situations where it creates family problems. Those individuals will steal from family members. They will not take care of themselves hygienically. And they feel like the world, just doesn't care about them. They feel like they're hopeless and that they can't even fit into their day-to-day lives with family. So what do? They retreat to the culture, which is detrimental to them, and that is other addicts. And so as a result, it is so important that there be some community or family support for these individuals. And it is very, very, very easy to get caught in this situation. My son, who recently, he's 23, went to the dentist, and he was given ibuprofen. I think it was either 500 or 800. Anyway, it was a high dosage. And I was talking to him, and I was talking to my wife about that, that you have to be careful because he had pain from having a tooth extracted, but that you have to be careful that you don't get to a point that you start asking for. And so I got in trouble with my wife because she said, no, he's hurting, he needs this. I says, yeah, I says, but be very careful about this. I am an individual who will take some pain, but how many of us have learned through this course from what those people said in that video, from our personal experiences, from our readings and our studies, how just very easy it is for a person who doesn't have a criminal background to find themselves graduating into a criminal background. So, so we started to talk about some of the things that we see individuals getting involved with, and mentions here some of the symptoms. I'll just read them because they're right here. Restlessness, muscle and bone pain, insomnia, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes, and sweating. All of these are symptoms of a person who might find themselves heading in the wrong direction. Talking about prescribed medications as bupropion and methadone, what they will do is they will mask the symptoms that the individual has. But methadone is something that we're discussing this week in our discussion forum. But what it really does is it takes the person into a position where they receive one drug in place of another, and clinics where these people go to get this methadone, it reaches a point that it can enable an individual to continue. And the reason why, the number one reason why methadone is effective is because it delays, and I said delays, the withdrawal symptoms, which are so very, very serious that individuals don't want to face. As you listened to that video last week or watched it, and experiences, and I learned from just listening to the two guys that I referred to that we had in the seminar at the campus in Romeoville. They said that one of the things that methadone does is it delays withdrawals. And one of the most devastating things to an addict who's trying to kick the habit is going through the withdrawals. However, it is one of the things that goes with the territory. So it says here that methadone is also detected in opioid on drug tests for employment. So if you go for employment and you're taking methadone, it's going to pop up as well, and it doesn't stop you from going on to other things. Another argument against methadone, it says here, is that it, as I said, it postpones the hard work of abstinence and recovery. And remember what I said before: abstinence is important. Abstinence is important. Or as you hear the term cold turkey, your people use that a lot of time with cigarette smoking, but it applies here. Is that you have to decide, and you're going to go through. You're going to go through, guys, if you find it, and you see an individual, and they need some strong support. And oftentimes, it's almost like climbing a grease pole. These individuals will get up and climb up and get weeks into it, and then all of a sudden slide right back down to the bottom. And so it is a very, very, very tough battle. And um, says here that when taking methadone, a person may not be abusing opioids, but their commitment to recovery is only half-hearted, and that's what I just said. And that intensive counseling, attending meetings, getting sponsors, and building a support network, that's why I said from families, from the community, from the churches, need to be there. And if you're taking methadone, you're not going to do that because the drug itself is going to do that. Some studies indicate that over 70% of people relapse after they stop using methadone. That shows you how strong that grip is that's on those individuals. And so anyway, there's some other places that you can do. Canopy, which I'm not going to take a lot of time, but if you want to take a look just to see what it's like. And then it tells you something on our website, and you can go ahead and look at that on your own. But the point of the matter is that I didn't want to take the time right now because I want to talk about a few other things. But it's very, very, very important that you check this out so you can get a clear understanding. Now, let's talk about treatment and rehab programs. Unfortunately, guys, at the forefront, I will say this to you, that one of the major concerns is the lack of treatment and rehabilitation program funding. Therefore, there's not enough to go around to deal with the issue or the epidemic that we find ourselves in. And especially dealing with inpatient programs. You may recall that I shared with you that the guys told us in our sessions that there are many individuals who would love to get inpatient programs, but because they have either little or no medical insurance, and there's not a lot of free programs around, it's not easy to get the help that's necessary to help the individual to stop from chasing that dragon. And you should be aware of the fact that some people, and most, I would say probably most, that I've run across need inpatient programs because as I shared with you about the experience of a young man I represented who was killed because he was out on bail, even if he was made a condition of the bail to go to a support program, the fact that he needed inpatient treatment would not help him in terms of stopping him from committing crimes and that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit, to get the drugs that they need. So it says not everyone responds the same way to treatment. So there's a lot of various methods, and you have to recognize that anyway. I mean, that's there's no paintbrush. And so short-term residential programs are dealing with what they call detoxification, where the individual gradually withdraws. Residential treatment also aids in helping that individual And the length of stay for short term, even listen to me, for a short term is typically a month, 1 month. And that's one of the worst 30 days that that individual is ever going to find themselves. Because what happens is that that individual is going to be using uh, uh, substance like methadone, but they're going to decrease it gradually instead of doing it cold turkey. Outpatient individual counseling uh, stops substance abuse using building skills that will help individuals. Um, and in those instances, usually it's like something like a AA, where there's a group and you get together with those groups. But you have to remember the strength of the individual will determine whether they're in a outpatient or inpatient program as to whether or not they're going to be successful in recovery. The guys said to us that there are people who stopped, and you saw that in the video from last week. They stopped. Like this one young lady you saw, it appeared she was very happy, enjoying her life, but in reality, she couldn't wait to get back to the drugs, and they were waiting for her, and she ended up overdosing. I can't state how important peers are to encouraging individuals to get recovery. I mean, they talk about AA, and they talk about programs to get together to end substance abuse, but one of the most important things is the strength of that individual and the strength of the individuals. Be aware that there are people who are sometimes in peer groups that are seriously themselves trying to overcome. And so it's like the blind leading the blind sometimes. But it is important that people be able to relate to these individuals. That's why some of the very good substance abuse counselors were former addicts themselves, not just students who read or studied it, but ended up actually using it and then share their experiences and then the education that they obtained. For opioid addiction, there's medication assisted like methadone and these others that we talked about, and then naltrexone, and this, you know what that is. That's one of those drugs that stops the actual effects of the opioid, but again, it says these prescribed medications ease the symptoms and quicken the transition to recovery. But once again, as we conclude this section, we look at the fact that they talk about the AA, the 12 steps. Now, notice the first step, and this is what I say to people all the time, is that admitting that they're powerless over alcohol, that their lives have become unmanageable. So admitting that you have a problem is numero uno, number one. And I do mean not just saying it, but saying it and meaning it and committing yourself to doing everything you can. And then the next thing that can happen is you believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. 3, make a decision to turn will over the care of God as we understood Him. And, you know, I'm strong about that because as a pastor, I share that with people. Some people don't believe in God, but here's the point. You still need to recognize that there is a force, or whatever you want to call it, greater than you that can help you. make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Let a man examine himself. That's taking the scripture, but it means self-examination. Admitting to God. Notice, see, listen to me. I have to say it because that's what it says here. It keeps referring to ourselves and other human beings. And 6, entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. I'm telling you, superhuman activity, a super activity that is above humans is what it takes. Be humble to help. And then made a list of persons they harmed, recognizing that when you use it, you probably also sell it, and then also you also harmed, if you didn't sell it, you harmed family members by stealing from them, by even sometimes physically attacking them, and much of the crime that takes place, which we're going to move to in just a few minutes. And then made the recommends to such people, except when to do so would injure them or others. Continue to take personal inventory. 11, prayer and meditation. 12, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So these are common steps that AA uses. These are the steps they use, but this is also a common component in recovery for addiction with opioids and other dangerous drugs there. So you find yourself there. Okay, so now let me take a few minutes and talk about the fact that, as I've said before, that one of our objectives is to discuss the use of drug courts and their effectiveness. You've probably read about that, but you should be aware of the fact that what courts do, the drug courts, for example, do, one of the main goals is not to incarcerate, but to educate and to get individuals to take a step towards recovery. Probably the one thing that court can't do, and as I've said this before many years as a lawyer, not just in drug court, is that you can write all the laws you want to write. You can increase the sentences as much as you want. It's going to take a commitment from that individual to recognize that they have an issue that they need to stop doing, and 2, to seek in another direction. I always tell people, go in a 180. When I say a 180, if you think about 180, think about it on a clock, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that's 90, okay, because there's 360, so it's a circle all the way around, or 60 minutes. So 1/4 of that is 15 minutes. Half of that is down to 6 o'clock, or 30 minutes, or as we like to say, degrees, it's 180 because it's a half of a circle. Now, if you take that posture and then go, and because it'll have you facing another direction, go in that direction, then you will begin to get further away from what's at the top at 12 o'clock. Because if you keep going around to 45, then you'll start to get closer to the problem again, and then 12, you're right back where you started. So the idea is, as I tell people using the illustration of driving a car, is that when you're driving a car, you have a rear view mirror, so you can see what's behind you, where you came from, and you have a windshield. Well, if you focus on your windshield, you'll be probably safer. If you concentrate on your rear view mirror, you're going to probably end up in an accident. So what am I saying? Your rear view mirror is your past. If you're going to focus on your past, it's going to continue to be your present, and it's going to keep you in bondage. And that's what I'm saying, that we, as lawyers, prosecutors, defense attorney, law enforcement, and the judges in drug court, what we want you to do. We want you to do that 180. We don't want to see you come back. We want to see drug court done away with. But how many of you already know that an important aspect of this issue and that drug courts operate on is recidivism? Because individuals keep committing the same offenses because they have not gone through the phases that we talked about earlier, those steps of going in another direction. They haven't followed the illustration that I gave a few minutes ago. And sometimes it's for fear, but that's why support is needed. Grab somebody's hand and go and teach them. And one other thing I will say to you, using that rearview mirror concept, is that if you keep going in the other direction, you'll look back through that rearview mirror and you won't even see it. Now, that doesn't mean that that thing has disappeared. It means that you shouldn't go back to it. What am I saying? Going back around the same people. Did you not know that there are triggers? Triggers can be in the form of music. They hear songs that remind them, and it reminds them of when they were high and makes you want to go back to getting high. Maybe it's little, but you'll be surprised. I'm telling you. I've talked to clients, listened to people in drug court, and heard testimonies of individuals who were like these guys that came to see us in that seminar. And they'll say that the music, the thing that they listen to, puts them in a reminder of the time. Alcoholics say it all the time, but it's also the same thing too. So the point of the matter is that there is a very serious recidivism issue that takes place because individuals don't accept the responsibility and don't have the resources to keep them focused. Remember, you can't score a touchdown till you get in the end zone. If you get tackled on the 1 yard line, I mean the 99-yard line, and it's 100 yards across the field, you haven't scored anything. It's when you cross that line and when you finish it. And so drug courts is an attempt to get you into the end zone and to get you to recognize that once you get into that end zone, you've done it. And by the way, you know, the first day you overcome it, then the second day you overcome it, the third day you overcome it, the fourth day you overcome it, and you keep going and you get stronger. However, keep in mind that no matter how far you're going in that direction, positive, it can take one little thing, one loss of a family member or a friend or somebody that could throw you back into it. Maybe you apply for a job and you don't get it because you used methadone and they said no, drugs are in your system. Yeah, but see, in that situation there, the employer is looking at it from the perspective that the reason you're using it is because you're a user and you're at the withdrawal stage, and they don't want to have someone working for them who's in that withdrawal stage because they can fall back into that habit at any time. How many know that we have many of these workplace violent situations that take place? Workplace theft, again, thefts in the home and things of that nature. Little things. If you ever want to really see something, sometimes sit in a car, and we did this in law enforcement because we were monitoring, and sat and watched pawn shops. Just sat in unmarked cars and watched the people going in and so forth. And, you know, we even go in sometimes to the shop and ask questions. and they couldn't give us information about the individuals. But what we we asked them, what was your assessment, and they'll say what it was. No, we didn't take the item because it appeared to be stolen. There was a serial number that was missing, or something along those lines, or either it's a very valuable piece of jewelry, and a person will take little or nothing for it. Those are dead giveaways. But anyway, these are some of the things. But anyway, back to the point is that drug courts are only as good as the individuals who are involved, to their commitment to kick the habit. And other than that, we're going to have crimes. And so incarceration and drug-related crime are actually I should say not oxymoron. They're the same thing. It's because of the fact that I can tell you that many of my clients who committed even some violent offenses, but especially the nonviolent offenses, committed them to support their habits. And they weren't trying to hurt anybody. That was the last thing they wanted. All they wanted to do was get to this drug that they needed. They needed to get whatever they needed, and it would do whatever it took. And oftentimes, they were caught. And somebody says, that's so crazy. No. Your free will is gone. It's gone. The treatment for heroin and opioid addiction has a strong impact on recidivism, because if you don't get to the root of the problem, and that is the addiction of that individual, then they're going to continue to commit the crimes to support their habits. And so, again, I guess what I'm saying in summary for this week's module is that it is so important that you recognize that everybody is to be treated as an individual. They're to be treated with dignity and respect, and that they don't want to do what they're doing. That is not their desire. That is not their role. And so as a result, what we need to do is to continue to seek answers. Well, we already have the answers, or as I say to people who will come to me, they'll say, and in my pastoral role, they'll say to me, I got a problem, I don't know what to do about it. And so I says, did you pray about it? And they'll say, yeah, I did. I said, no, you didn't. And they explained what they did. I said, you went through procedures and steps. Steps without commitment is nothing. And that's the same thing we're talking about here in this this tremendous problem that we as individuals continue to see on a daily basis. Our crime rate will not decrease until we're able to get more people delivered from the addiction of narcotics, heroin, and opioids. And so that's pretty much what I want to say. So I'm going to go back in. If there are any questions that anyone has or anything they want to type in the chat box before I go, I'll be happy to do that. Today's lecture, by the way, is immeasurable with the exam. I looked at it. I already know what's on it. And if you pay close attention to the stuff that is in your reading material, and again, I repeat, it sounds like a broken record, but I keep saying it over and over, your PowerPoints are so important. Because at this point in time now, it's not about your written assignments now. You've done those. I've I've graded them. I've got week 5 that I'm working on uh, starting now, and all your grades will be in by next Monday, a week from yesterday. And in fact, I usually finish them by Sunday, and maybe even before that with this class. But the point of the matter is that is. I do want to say that I have enjoyed teaching this class. This is my first time teaching this 5.5, and I will be teaching again in the summer. Judging from the grades that most of you have at this point, I won't be seeing most of you. I mean, probably over 90% of you. So, you know, but my thing for you to remember about this course is, remember, the title is Drugs and Crime, and there's a correlation between crime and drugs. And don't forget that. Don't forget that when you become a police officer. Don't forget that when you become a probation officer. Don't forget that when you become a parole officer or a social worker or whatever area that you decide to work in. Do not forget that, because that is so, so, so important. I want to say this to each of you, that if you, and I've said this to many of my students, if you need any support after class, recommendations, or want me to help you to get a position, and you need a recommendation or a referral, feel free to reach out to me. You can continue to reach out to me through my Facebook page, which is Richard Wright JD. That's for Facebook. Or you can email me at the email address that's in the class. You can always email me there. Or you could send it through my personal email, which you also should have. If not, I'll put it in here. It's Richard at Wright. God is able.net. So, okay. So, I'm going to say to you that as I end drug court, that's it. So, I again recognizing, I want to congratulate one of my students. I'm not saying the person's name, but they know who they are because of what I'm getting ready to say, for consistently attending each of the lectures. And thumbs up. And I hope that that you enjoyed what I have shared with you, because I didn't just read the material. I brought you some experiences. I brought you some information that would help you and benefit you. And again, this course was well put together. My hat is off to Patty Laney, who was the subject matter expert, who one of my colleagues and a good friend of mine. We have worked together on this course when it was an 11-week course, for doing such an awesome job with putting together some relevant material that applies to the law and also to some of the causes of the reason why crime is related to drugs. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And so if you have her for a class, tell her I said that. But yes, she's awesome. So anyway, I'm going to say good night to each of you, and hope to see you in some of my future classes. As I said, next quarter I will be teaching Introduction to Corrections, as I'm teaching it now. I will be teaching critical issues, no, contemporary issues in criminal justice, where it's like a smorgasbord of a course that you go through a lot of different areas. It's more of a hands-on course for students to help them focus on their careers that they've determined, and then we just give you some guidance. I add little to it, but I'm there to be of support there. And then the other thing that I will be teaching is not until term 2, and that will be drugs and crime again. And then one of my favorite courses, the Introduction to Criminal Law, which is a dynamite course. And I like to share my experiences with students as a criminal defense attorney, prosecutor, and police officer. So good night.